Alright, so as with most software adventures, we start with Google. Go ahead, search up Jmeter, find their official website, Apache Jmeter's website, jmeter.apache.org. Go there, download, releasing section, and go ahead and pick up the 5.1.1 zip if you're on Windows, or if you're on Unix, usually get .tgz, whatever you like. I downloaded it and I added it to my downloads directory, and once you get it, you will have the Apache Jmeter 5.1.1 directory available to you. I usually use 3.5.1. I've used 2 in the past. 5, I'm not sure what new additions they added, but this is the latest version. Now, let me just quickly, I'm going to quickly give you a very basic intro into Jmeter, and then I want to kind of give you a little bit more context in terms of the directory setup, the files that you'll use, as well as kind of a little bit of context into this. So, at the basic of it, Jmeter can be used as a basic GUI item. Create your tests if you want. Let's create a thread group. Thread group is the object or entity that is a group of threads. How many threads do you want running? How many times do you want it to loop? This is basically the item that shows how many instances of this test will be running and how many times will you loop. Let's make 100 loops. And from this thread group, let's branch off. Let's add something called a sampler. Now, when you're doing this, if you are experienced with using the Java SDK and the Jmeter API, you may be familiar with using Java requests. You basically use your own jar to get a Java request in there and make your own custom HTTP request. But because I'm not doing that right now, I'm going to use the default HTTP request. Let's go ahead and use the protocol as HTTPS. Let's use google.com as an example. Port number, we will leave blank. Path, we'll put as that. Content encoding, put as UTF-8. Not sure if that's necessary. Now, here's one basic thing with JMeter. We have our request. This is the request it's going to make. It is going to loop 100 times with one thread. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a listener. Now, the listener is basically just for you, the human being, to either analyze the information, or what I'm about to do right now is simply see that it's working. I just want to see, is this running? Is it sending information? I don't know. Let's see. So let's go ahead and run it. Oh, well, actually, let's save it. I already have the same exact thing. Let's go ahead and save that. Can I overwrite? Yes, I'd like to overwrite. Run it. And let's see. Does this work? It is not showing me what I wanted to see. Let's actually stop that. It looks like it's working, but that's not what I was looking for, actually. Let's go to listener. Let's go to simple data writer, view results in table. View results in table will tell us the status code. And there we go. Very easily, we see the status code is basically a green check mark, which means 200, which means it's all right, which means we're making HTTP requests, we're getting a 200 response, and it is working to our liking. And I definitely recommend, if you're doing some basic debugging or sanity testing, that you basically check this out, make sure that it is running the way you want it to run, and even more so, if you can, if you're using something custom with Java SDK, go ahead and put some logging of some sort. So that is the basics of it. You want to create your sampler, you want to create your interpreter to look at the data and make sure everything's working the way you want it to work, and you run it that way. Now, this is a sanity test. 9 times out of 10, Apache Jmeter also recommends this. You want to run tests from the console, you want to run it from the terminal, and I'll go ahead and show you that in a second, but let me just show you one thing in terms of the directory structure, because this is actually pretty important when it comes to, any customized items you want to add here, whether it be a plugin or whether it be your own custom jar. Now, as you saw, the bin directory, this is kind of self-explanatory. This is usually where your, results files you'll put here, or you'll put your resource files, you'll put your JMX files, which is the file extension for the test plan. That test plan we just created, the thread group and the simple sampler, it is the view results in table.jmx, which in reality is literally just XML. In reality, it's just XML, but it's .jmx. And the other very important directory is the docs directory. Believe it or not, there is some documentation for this. Not a lot. I've read most of this. Granted, it was 2 years ago, but trust me, there isn't as much as you'd want. In terms of documentation online, it doesn't seem to be a lot. So then lib is probably the second most important directory, because lib is going to be your library of dependencies. This is out of the box. This is what JMeter needs to run. It uses Java. It needs these jars to be here in this file, or JMeter will not work correctly. So anytime you're customizing anything, anytime you're adding anything, if you go to run your test, all of a sudden you're getting a no such method exception, no such class definition, or some type of runtime exception from Java, it more than likely means you're either missing a dependency here, or you may be having an issue where you have, let's just say, for example, mongo.java driver 2.1.1.3, and then you have another one, mongo.driver 2.1.4. You're having a clash. You're having a version clash. What you need to do is be very careful with what you add in this directory, because you will more than likely have to do a sanity test just to make sure it's working to your liking, or working at all, really. And then in this directory, the .ext directory, or ext directory, it is the execution folder, essentially. This is where all of your custom jars, if you're going to create your custom jars, go here. Or if you're going to download some plugin that has been shared for JMeter, it is in the jar format, and you will put it in this directory. And once you put in this directory, you can reference it either as a plugin or as some type of a request, Java request, in JMeter itself. So let me just give you a quick kind of a view into JMeter and when it comes to Java requests, because as you saw, we were using the basic HTTP request that comes with JMeter, but if you create your own jar using the Java SDK and the API provided by JMeter, if you somehow figure out how to fight through the lack of documentation and the lack of online information and somehow do it, I commend you, because I've done it and it took a minute. You will find that you need to use something called a Java request, which is something that is similar to HTTP requests, but a little bit more advanced in the sense that you're loading a jar. And this jar that you're loading can literally be whatever logic you want. If you have a jar that is making requests to a database to get some information before sending a request, I don't know why you want to do that, would slow it down, but let's just say that's what you're doing, you can do that. It's a jar. It is whatever you want it to do. 9 times out of 10, the reason why you're going to add a Java request sampler here, your own custom sampler, is because you want more control, or more than likely it's in terms of access. For example, when I wrote it, the reason why I wrote it is because I wanted to make requests to an AWS item that required AWS4 signature, which is not very easy to do with JMeter. With JMeter, you can add things like headers, and you can add, JOT tokens or static, stale, not changing token values, but it's hard to do things like the AWS4 signature that's dynamic, and you need to use their SDK and their library to, basically create that header, or basically sign your request with it. So that's what this Java request is going to be used for, and that's why my intention is this is kind of like an introductory type of thing, basics of JMeter. This is something that's very common, but the next thing is something that's not very common, not very well documented, and was pretty hard to kind of get into, was using the Java SDK with JMeter's API and basically leveraging that information to create, this test plan that you're looking at, but in the Java SDK. You can run it from the Java SDK in IDE, or you can build the .jmx test plan, which is, as what you're looking at right now, is a .jmx test plan, and run it that way. So that's kind of the basics of JMeter in terms of using the GUI. Although, like I mentioned, you don't really want to use the GUI when you're doing your tests. Once you do a sanity test and you see that your requests are getting 200s, you are actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. What you're going to do is basically open your console terminal in the bin directory, and you're going to go ahead and run JMeter from the command line. This is what they recommend. So let's do view results in table.jmx. Like I said, this is just XML. The .jmx is the file extension. Let's go ahead, let's do -L. -L denotes the results, basically what the response status codes are, what the information is. Results file .jtl. JTL is the preferred file extension that's used with JMeter. It's really, you could put .json, you could put .text, you could put whatever you want, but .jtl is the preferred extension. And then we're going to do -J for the run log. Let's do run log file.jtl. The runlogfile.jtl is more of a text file. It's basically console output of the Java. You know, if there's a runtime exception, it'll tell you. The -L result file.jtl is more of a results file. It'll tell you the status code of things. It'll tell you if you get a 400 error from HTTP perspective. It'll tell you if something takes a second to make a request as opposed to what you want, which is like 100 milliseconds. And also the results file is very important. You want to save that results file after you run, you know, a test for whether it be 15 minutes or 15 hours, however long it's going to be. You want to preserve that results file because this results file, as simple as it is the key to graphing your information, analyzing your information, and making sure that everything is all right, everything's okay. And, you know, you could do that by loading it in Excel, and if you want, you can look at it, you know, as I'm looking at it right now, or make something to interpret it. But really, what's good for kind of determining the validity of your responses and your result file is actually using Jmeter again. Instead of running tests, you're actually going to use it to graph, you know, test results, or use it for, well, let's go ahead and open that test plan actually. Let's open that, view results. Okay, and now as I showed you earlier, we had that view results in table, which at the time dynamically was just showing you the results. So let me show you the results file from that command line argument we ran. Oh my god, I'll tell you one thing though. I really do detest the UI when it comes to Jmeter. It reminds me of Photoshop from 2010. Okay, so now we have the results file from what we ran. We could see, okay, 200, it took a sample time of this much. The thread group, this was the thread group name. This can be more or less customized to your liking. Tells you the start time, tells you the latency, this, that, and the third. But the great thing about this results file is that you can take the same results file and apply it to different filters and get different information out of it. If I wanted to graph this, I can actually do that by adding yet another listener. Let's add something with a graph, graph results. Let's go ahead, let's get the results file.jtl, and boom, there we go. We have the throughput here, we have the average, they also mark the information. We also have the median. Wow, you know what, I tell you, this is Jmeter 5.1.1. The one I usually use is 3, and I'll tell you right now, I like 3 more just based off the fact that it's white and silver. This black on purple on blue, like the text, is just not working for me. And another thing that's usually good just to get a basic idea, usually for me, is the aggregate report. It'll kind of tell you the standard deviation. It'll also tell you the median. It'll also tell you the 95th percentile, the 99th percentile, and kind of give you a good idea of, you know, what your results are looking like. So Jmeter, really, really good tool for running performance tests. Great API, really good for, you know, using their API and writing your tests. The only downside I've found is that documentation really is lacking. I feel like there should be a lot more provided by Jmeter in terms of basic API use, as well as, you know, kind of just some dependency management things. But hey, you know, it's still a good product, and as you can see, you can also use it to basically graph your results and interpret the information you're given in order to better understand it and better record it. And this is really helpful, and it's really good that you can run this in that text file, take that text file, you know, and put it in here and extrapolate it and analyze the data to your liking. So that's pretty much the ins and outs of the basics of Jmeter. You know, again, you can use Jmeter to create a test plan just as I did right now using the GUI. You can use it for whatever website. If there's a jot token or a stale token, you can do that using it in the header section. Although, again, if you're going to do something that's more dynamic, such as the AWS4 signing or even OAuth or something like that, you more than likely want to create your own Java sampler, which is the intention is to do that in the next video. Basically show the or actually not the next video, the video after that, basically showing the Java SDK being utilized, and then after that creating your own custom sampler using their API. But that's pretty much it. That is the straight and narrow of it. I definitely think Jmeter is a good product. Again, not that much documentation, but hey, I'm making this video. Hopefully I can put this down there, and since there was no documentation and now this is being introduced, that's like what, 100% increase. So I'm pretty much contributing everything. You're welcome. I appreciate your gratitude, and I definitely will say I will more than likely reference this video in the future, and I will thank myself for having the fortitude of denoting this and documenting this Because like I mentioned, I actually created this custom sampler like 2 years ago and recently had to revisit it and do it again, or at least look at it again. And I was scratching my head wondering like how. And thankfully I had the documentation, and it only took me 15 minutes to figure out instead of the original 15 million years. So I got that going